Thank you, Governor, and to your entire team for the incredible work you're doing, and it's been a great partnership. I know my team and your team are getting to know each other really, really well, so thanks for being so accessible. I might just say right up front, by the way, I did print the bill out and brought it with me. It's right over there for those of you in the room. I thought about putting it up here, Governor, but it might have tipped the podium over. So if you've never seen what $2 trillion looks like on paper, it's right over here. Let me say also right up front, and share from Chris and me our condolences to the families who are losing people to this awful disease. It's a horrible sacrifice, but we're grateful to everybody who sees these examples and demonstrates the type of care that you're asking them to, Governor. And this is real. This is real, and we need to treat it as such and take the precautions that you and others are asking of us. I also would say early on, before I forget, that while I did print out 880 pages, for those of you who want quick access to other resources, my website, cramer.senate.gov, we put a /COVID-19 page so that you can go to that. There's a lot of the frequently asked questions on there, access to the IRS and DOL, Department of Labor and Health, and all of the other agencies, so that you can get to that quickly through our website. And we try to update it as quickly as possible. Senator Hoeven did a good job of giving the broad overview of the bill. The bill kept growing both in cost and size because the demands were great and are great, and they're continuing. And in a future, one of these, Governor, we can maybe talk about phase 4. There's a lot of talk already beginning there about that. I might just add a couple of things that the Governor's talking about. I spent a lot of my personal energies on the bill focused on that small business piece of it, the 500 employees and less, the Paycheck Protection Act, the grants disguised as loans. We were very strategic in making sure that the distribution of the Paycheck Protection Act were the community banks, but I also want to include credit unions and in many cases the farm credit services. They were left out in the early stages. And this might be a good time, frankly, Governor, to thank you and the community banks and credit unions, the lenders in North Dakota who were very engaged with us on this. As a member of the banking committee, I heard from all of them often. And your shop, I want to especially compliment Michelle over at Department of Commerce for facilitating the webinars. I had the opportunity to talk to over 400 lenders last week because of that, and 90 plus the week before, thanks to the North Dakota Bankers and Independent Community Bankers and the Credit Union Association, to walk them not only through it, but then to get their feedback to fix the bill so that it was more accessible to more people. And not surprising, having been an old economic development director for North Dakota, not surprising, our community banks were more up to speed than most on being SBA approved, SBA certified. Our credit unions are getting there very quickly. We were able to get ahead of the curve because we were ahead of the curve. And some of our other ag lenders, Farm Credit Services in Mandan, Minot, Grand Forks are also all SBA approved. So if you haven't already and you're a small business and you've got expenses, payroll expenses, this is retroactive to February 15th. If you haven't already started working with your banker, start working with them, because as Senator Hoeven said, Secretary Mnuchin, as recently as this morning, when he was saying it last week, we were doubtful. As recently as this morning, said he wants to have that money in the hands, or at least the rules in the hands of the bankers by the end of this week. So he's sticking with that. Those expenses that the Governor, that Senator Hoeven laid out are covered. Those basic monthly expenses and can be turned in for a grant. I also might add the 500 and fewer employees question comes up a lot because there are certain NAICS codes that where the number is greater than 500. So if you have an associated code, you may very well, and this is especially true of our energy producers in the Bakken, you may very well qualify even though you have more than 500 employees. The Governor covered several of these other things. I might add just one other thing, since I brought up energy. John's exactly right. We're working with the administration now on the implementation of a lot of this. But during the middle of this coronavirus issue that has lowered demand, obviously, for oil, that's had a tremendous impact on the prices. On top of that, our so-called friends in Saudi Arabia have engaged in a price war with our adversaries in Russia. That has had a devastating impact. And I know you're going to see it, Governor, in revenues. And a couple of us, Senator Sullivan from Alaska and I, have sort of led the charge on behalf of energy-producing states, and in a less than probably diplomatic way for some, in challenging OPEC and our Saudi Arabian friends, and a number of things, and I won't go through them all now, that we've engaged in. Happy to answer questions about it. But I did just this afternoon get off the phone and had a long conversation with the State Department, the Assistant Secretary of State, Fallon, who's the Assistant Secretary of State for Energy, and I had a long talk about their diplomatic process. I've been glad to provide some muscle behind the diplomacy to make sure that Saudi Arabia understands I'm not going to support 2,500 of our troops in Saudi Arabia or 4 different missile defense batteries in Saudi Arabia that are protecting Saudi oil assets rather than protecting American soldiers in places like Iraq, when these friends of ours are basically waging war on our industry and our jobs and our workers in this country. So glad to answer more questions about that as well if necessary. But I think Senator Hovind's covered most of the high marks, and happy to answer questions in the Q&A.